Hi everyone! So on August 26, 2025, Animal Crossing and Nintendo released a crossover collab. I was like, oh my god, I've never owned a pair of Crocs before. $60 is kind of steep, but I haven't purchased slip-on shoes in like over a decade. Then a great idea hit me and I was like, oh, I can do a crochet tutorial and make some Animal Crossing leg warmers that would go with these Crocs. So I was sketching out the ideal and then I pulled up the site again because I was trying to get the right yarn colors. I was like, oh my god.
These shoes are $300.
Wait, no, these shoes are actually $85 US, not $60. I'm someone who owns like 3 pairs of shoes, so like personally I'd rather get like a pair of boots or something for that much money. But even if you don't get the Crocs, these leg warmers are still gonna be just so cute to wear with whatever shoe that you have. So that's why I decided to make this tutorial still, and I'm really glad that I did because they came out so cute. And if you make these leg warmers, please tag me on socials because I would love to see your creations that you create from following my tutorial. And especially if you get the Crocs, I want to see how they look together. Okay, that's enough yapping for now. It's really not a big deal or anything. I just wanted to be dramatic and have some fun. I usually don't do little talky parts like this before my tutorials. Let me know if you like this or if you just prefer if I just get right into the tutorial. I will be releasing more gamer-themed patterns and you don't want to miss out on that, so make sure you subscribe. Also, please leave a like on this video and leave a comment that says, oh my god, shoes, so that I know that you listened to this part. So let's get cozy and crochet our leg warmers. We're going to start with the ribbing on the top of our leg warmer. And you can make this as tall or short as you would like. It will still be the same process. Whatever number you would like to do, you are going to chain that number plus 1 for a turning chain. For mine, I'm going to do 6 stitches, so I'm going to chain 7. And to help us later when we go to sew both of the sides together, we are going to place some stitch markers to help with that. So I'm going to place a stitch marker on the very first chain. And I am placing it around both of the front loops. And the second stitch marker is going to be placed on the second chain from the hook right here. We're going to be creating a single crochet ribbing. And on the very first row, I like to turn the chain and work into the back bumps. So if we are looking at our chain, we have the front here, turn it around, and this is where the back bumps are. So right here, this is the back bump. So that is what we're going to be working into. So turn your chain around and we are going to place a single crochet into where our first stitch marker is. We are skipping the first chain from the hook and we're going to place our single crochet into this first back bump. And then we're going to place another single crochet into the next back bump. And we're just going to continue to place single crochets in every back bump going down our chain. And again, you don't have to do the same number that I am. It will still be the same process. So you can do more or less if you would prefer to have your ribbing be higher or lower. Now we are going to start what is going to be our repeating pattern for the entire ribbing. Now when we get to the bottom here, and the bottom is going to be where our tail is, you're going to chain 1 and turn your work around. We're going to be working into the back loop, and the back loop is this loop right here. It's the one that's further away from you. This is the front loop right here, and that means that these up here, these are the back loops. And that is what we're going to be working into for all of the ribbing. Make sure you skip the chain. We don't want to work into that chain 1 space. And then we're going to place our first single crochet into the back loop right here, just like that. And since I was doing 6 for mine, I should be making 6 single crochets on every side. So that was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And here is what mine looks like at the end of this row. And we basically do the same exact thing that we just did when we were working down the other side. So we chain 1, turn our work. Now with our work turned like this, we are still working into the back loops. So these loops up here, these are the front loops, and these are the back loops. So you just do the same exact thing. Make sure you skip the chain 1, and then I'm making 6 single crochets down. So there we go. There is our first ridge. We are just going to repeat the same thing the entire way through our ribbing. So let's create one more ridge together. So chain 1, turn, and then I'm going to make sure you skip the chain, and I'm going to make 6 single crochet into the back loops. Now I'm back at the top. I'm going to chain 1, turn your work, skip the chain, and then make 6 single crochets into the back loop. Okay, we've created our second ridge, so there we go. This is what mine is looking like. And again, you're just going to repeat that the entire way. And you will just keep doing that until this reaches around your leg in a comfortable way. I made mine not too tight and not too loose. Don't worry if it is on the looser side, because at the very end, we will be adding a string around this, and then that will help you tighten it, and you can just tie it and make it as tight or as loose as you want. I'm going to continue making my ribbing, and then I will see you when I'm done. I've reached the end of my ribbing, and here is how it looks. So it's very important that after we are done with this and you have the length that you're happy with, you want to count how many ridges are here, because that way when you go to do your second leg warmer, you can have it be the same length. So when I say ridges, it's when you kind of fold this here, you can see they're kind of poking out. So I went ahead and I counted how many of these I have all the way to the end. And for me, I have 18. Now, what's very important is when you get to the end, you want to make sure that you are ending on the top. So the bottom is where our tail is. And so this is the top, and that is where you want to end. And we're just going to slit stitch this together to close it. So switch to a 4.0 mm hook. And I'm going to chain 1. And now I'm going to just fold up the other end so that these two are together here. Before we begin the sewing, if you'd like, if you're a beginner and you're not really sure how these are lining up, it can be helpful to kind of connect them together. So just take your first stitch marker and open it up. And then come over to the other side. And then you're just going to connect it to the first stitch on the other side. Just like this. And I'm going through both loops on this side as well. And then you can just close this back up, and that'll help kind of hold this together here. Now we're just going to slit stitch both of these sides together. So I chained one, and I'm going to insert my hook through the first stitch, and I am going through both loops on both sides. So going through both loops here, and then I'm going to slide my hook through this other side. If you're having trouble inserting, you can always remove the stitch marker. So now it's through both stitches, and I'm just going to yarn over and pull it through both of them, and then pull it through the loop again and create a slit stitch. And now we're just going to do that same thing going all the way down. So I'm going through the 2 stitches on this side, and then I'm going through, or sorry, I meant 2 loops, going through the 2 loops on this side and the 2 loops on the side where we started, and then create your slit stitch. And now I'm going through the next stitch. And I am pulling tight to seam this tightly together. And now I'm on my last stitches. And if this is hard for you with these together, just go ahead and remove the stitch marker. And there we go, we have sewed them together. Okay, now I'm going to pull this up a little here, and I'm going to remove my hook. So the side that we just sewed up, that for me, I'm going to consider that to be the wrong side of our work. So we need to flip it back to the right side. And when you flip it, you want to make sure you take it towards you this way so that it looks like this. If you go the other way like this and you have your yarn kind of coming through it, you don't want it to do that. So when it's like this, fold it towards you, just like that. I'm switching back to my 5.0 mm hook. So now what we're going to do is chain 1. Before we begin, if you would like, I'm going to just mark where my last stitch is going to go. So if we're looking at our project here we have our chain 1, and we have this ridge right here. I'm just going to place my stitch marker somewhere on the top of this ridge. Just through any of the loops on the top of it. It doesn't really matter where it is. It could go here, or it could kind of go here, just anywhere on top of this stitch where it's sticking out. And that's just marking where our last stitch is going to go. This round is a little bit strange because basically what we're going to be doing is creating single crochets around the ridge here. And this is just going to give us a clean base to start working the leg warmer off. I like to do this just to finish this off, and also to make sure that both of our leg warmers that we're going to make have the same amount of stitches. Since I had 18 ridges and each ridge is 2 rows, I should have 36 single crochets by the end of this. You just take however many ridges you had and times it times 2. And that is how many single crochets you'll want to have at the end. And this is just going to help you stay consistent between both leg warmers. When we work our single crochets around this, it does not have to be perfect. It's kind of hard to get it into the same exact loop going all the way around because it is, it's a little messy looking. So it doesn't have to be in the exact same spot going around, but there is a way to kind of make it consistent. And the way I like to do it is when I'm on top of a ridge, I'm going to be making 1 single crochet. And then in between the ridges where it's kind of stretchy here, like right here, then that is where I'm going to make my 2nd single crochet. And so I'll have 2 single crochets within that 1 sort of ridge. I hope that makes sense. It's a little bit difficult to explain, but I will take you through it. So we're basically going to be doing a single crochet on top of the ridge, in between, on top, in between, and you're just going to repeat that all the way around. And it really doesn't have to be perfect. The main goal is just to try to get 2 single crochets on each ridge so that you have an even number. So let's start by creating our first single crochet on top of our first ridge. So I'm just going to grab a random loop here on top. Again, it doesn't matter. And then I'm going to create a single crochet. And I'm going to add a stitch marker on top of my first single crochet. So I just made a single crochet on top of the ridge, and now I'm going to go in between. And I'm just grabbing a loop in between. And I'm creating my next single crochet. Now I'm going to go on top of the ridge, and I'm just going to grab a loop and create a single crochet. And then in between the ridge, on top of the ridge, in between, and I'm just grabbing a loop on top, grab a loop in between, just like that. That is how we make the single crochets on top of these. So go ahead and continue to work this. When I'm back at the stitch marker, that's going to be the last stitch that goes on top of the ridge, and then we're going to make 1 more that's our kind of in between. And this part is definitely a little awkward because it is where we sewed this up. And then we are just going to slip stitch to the first single crochet to close this. And I did forget to hide my tail on this, which is what I was going to do, but I'm just going to hide it on the next row instead, so I will show you how to do that. So here is how mine is looking at the ends. Now for this entire pattern, the way that you end your rounds, you can slit stitch to the first stitch, and then you can chain 1 and fasten off because we are done with the white color. I personally don't like to end my rows like that though, so I'm just going to show you how I end mine. But if you are a beginner, you may want to just stick with doing a slit stitch and chaining 1 and then just fastening off. But what I like to do is do an invisible join instead because I just think it looks a little bit neater. So if you are going to do an invisible join, just remove the slit stitch that we made. So after your last stitch, you won't chain 1 or anything. We're just going to cut our yarn. And then you're going to pull up the yarn here. Place your yarn on the darning needle. And what we're going to do is basically we're going to create a stitch on top of this one here. And we're going to connect it to the next stitch. So I'll just show you how to do that. I'm going to go ahead and just move the stitch marker out of the way. You can remove it if you'd like. So that's our first stitch. You're going to go over to the second stitch and you're going to insert your needle going away from you and then pull it through. And you're going to tighten it to where it kind of looks like the same length as your other stitches. And then I'm going to go back through and I'm going to take it through the back loop of the stitch where this is coming out of. So this is our last stitch that we're going back into. We're going through the back loop right here. So insert your needle, and I like to also kind of grab a little bit of extra just so it's more secure. And pull that down. And then you want to tighten it, and you're just kind of making it look, again, like the same length as your other stitches. I'm going to remove this stitch marker. And there we go. That is how we do an invisible join, and we just created this stitch right here. So this stitch is going to be the first stitch of the round, because all we did is we just placed basically a stitch on top of the first stitch. But as you can see, it looks a lot neater. And again, you don't need to do this method. I'm just a perfectionist, so I don't like any extra bulk or anything here. So this will just make it a little bit cleaner looking. So another thing that I will do when I do the invisible stitch, if you are doing this method, I like to turn the project around, and I'm just going to kind of weave the tail in just a little bit to bring it up over here, because we're going to be working this way, and it's the same way every round. I'm just taking it through a few stitches. It's just going to help secure it a little more, and then I can pick it up in the back here to hide the tail as I'm working around. And as for the tail that I forgot to hide, I'm going to kind of do the same thing because it's kind of down a little low here. I'm just going to bring it up through a few stitches. Just like that. So now I have these tails ready to be hidden here. We're going to attach our one round of yellow now. This is going to be like our sand color. And the way we're going to attach this is you want to put a slip knot on the hook. And you can attach this any way you want. There is several different ways that you can attach your yarn to a project, but this is what I like to do because I just think it's a little bit less finicky. So when we are looking at our project here, we have our first stitch, and this is where we're going to attach it to, but we are going to attach it to the back loop only. And we're going to do this through the whole project. When we are attaching a new color, this is going to be the same thing. This is the back loop only back here. Place your slip knot on your hook and then pull it through. I really like to try to make sure that the knot is over on the inside of the project. So try to hold the tail back there and then chain one, and this will attach our yarn. There's two different methods that can be used to start your rounds, and I will show you how to do both of those methods. So the first one is definitely, I would say, more beginner friendly. It's kind of just the typical way that you would usually start your round. So we will just chain two because we already created a chain here. So now we have a chain of 3, and this does not count as a stitch. We want to insert a double crochet into the first stitch. And this will count as your first double crochet. So you can go ahead and mark that. And that'll help, if you are a beginner, that'll help you kind of keep track of this. So that is one way to start your round. And I'm going to show you how I start mine. So after the chain 1, because that is how we connected our color here, I'm going to do what's called a stacked single crochet, and that's going to count as my first double crochet. So to make that, and again, we are still working into the back loop only, create a single crochet, and then you'll see that we have kind of 2 loops in the front here. So this loop right here is the one I'm going to be working into. So insert your hook through that loop and then create another single crochet. That is how you stack single crochets. And then I'm just going to chain 1. And this is what counts as my first double crochet of the round. So you can just mark that with a stitch marker. Okay, now we are just going to create double crochets around in every stitch into the back loop only until we get to the last stitch. That one will be a little bit different. And I'm going to be hiding my yarn tails with me as I go. So I'm going into the first stitch here. I'm just going to be grabbing the yellow yarn, my yellow yarn tail on this first double crochet. And then on the next one, I've got my white tails here. So I'm going to grab all 3 of these. Preferably you would have 2, but yeah, like I said, I forgot to weave this one in. So just put all of those yarn tails over your hook in the back to keep them on the inside of the project. It may also help every so often to kind of tug on them to keep it nice and tight. And just continue to make double crochets while hiding your yarn for however many stitches you would like, just until you feel like your ends are secure in your project. After I've made a couple stitches, I'm going to go ahead and drop the yellow yarn. I don't really prefer to hide 3 tails at once because it can add some bulk back here. And then I'm going to drop another tail after a few more stitches. And I'm just going to hide it behind a couple more. You can also just weave in your tails at the end. You don't have to hide them behind your stitches like this. It's just what I prefer because it's less to weave in. And so after I've done several stitches, I'm just going to leave the tails back there and I'm just going to continue as normal, working into the back loops, creating my double crochets all the way around. I'm now at my last stitch, so this one's just going to be a little bit different. Instead, we are going to do an increase in this stitch. And doing an increase means that we're going to place 2 double crochets instead of 1. So there's my first double crochet, and then I'm going to insert 1 more double crochet. And that is how you increase. And then again, when you want to finish your row, you can either slit stitch to the first stitch and then just chain 1 and then fasten off this color because we're just doing 1 round of yellow. Or you can do the invisible join, just like we did on the row below. And whichever method you want to do is totally fine. Now you can choose to hide your yarn tails now. If you want to secure them a little bit more, you can put them through a few more stitches, or you can just cut them off as they are right here, or you can do this at the end all at once, whatever you prefer. Sometimes I will secure mine through a few more stitches by going back in the opposite direction. Just kind of depends on what mood I'm in, honestly. Whatever you want to do, like I said, you could just cut them off here, or you can weave them in a little bit more. Make sure you don't cut the tail, though, of the one that you are working on right now. So you may want to wait and just do it at the end. It really doesn't matter, whatever you prefer. Now we are going to begin our repeating pattern that we are going to be doing for most of this project. Now I'm starting with blue. You can start with whatever color you would like. Anytime you're switching to a new color, you are going to be connecting to the back loop only, and we are going to be working around in the back loop only on that first round. What that's going to do is kind of create these little lines in between each color, and I just think it makes the project look a little bit neater. If you don't like that though, you don't have to work in the back loop only. You can just work around in both loops. So I'm going to connect this yarn to the back loop. Just like I explained on the previous round, you can either start with the chain by chaining 2, which will equal a chain 3, or you can start with the stack single crochet. In the beginning of each round, when you're connecting a new color, we are going to place a increase into the first stitch. And so that means that we need to place another double crochet into the first stitch here. So just like the previous round, I'm going to be working double crochets into the back loop. And I am hiding my yarn tails as I go. And just place double crochets all the way around in the back loop, just like we did on the first round. I am at my last stitch, and I'm just going to place one double crochet into the last stitch on this round. And then when I'm at the end here, I am going to slip stitch to the first stitch, because we are going to be doing 2 rounds of each color. So to begin round 2 of our repeating pattern, you can either chain 3 or you can do a stacked single crochet. So I'm just going to create a stacked single crochet for mine. On this round, we are going to place double crochets around in each stitch, and we are going to be just working through both loops, just like you normally would. So just place double crochets around in every stitch until we get to our last stitch. When you reach the last stitch, we are going to be placing an increase in that last stitch. So place 2 double crochet into the last stitch. You'll end the round with whichever method you would prefer to, and then you will attach the next color. So you'll just repeat these 2 rounds for a while, and you'll be alternating colors. So to make it more simple, starting from the blue, we're just going to consider that round 1. And then, so this will be round 2. So don't worry about the rest of this. So for me, I repeat round 1 until round 17. You just want to keep doing this pattern, and it will gradually start to increase your leg warmer. So it just depends, 1, on how long you want your leg warmer to be, and 2, how wide you want it to be, how much of an increase you want. When we get to the very end, we will be kind of pulling it in a little bit, and this will hopefully help the leg warmer not drag on the floor too much. Okay, so go ahead and continue working on your rounds until you reach your desired length. I am currently on round 18, and for me, my last increase round was 17. So I just wanted to show you that on this round here, I'm just not going to increase in the last stitch. And I'm going to close my rounds how I have been. At this point, when you are done increasing and your leg warmer is as wide as you want it to be, you are just going to do normal rounds, just like we've been doing, but you just won't increase in the first or the last stitch. Now for my leg warmer, I mostly increase the whole way. I'm only going to be doing 3 rounds in total where I'm not increasing. So I'm just going to work normally, but if you stopped increasing a lot earlier than I did and you want your leg warmer to be longer, then what I would do is I would turn my rounds, because that's going to help keep the seam in the middle. While we have been increasing, we've been keeping the seam in the middle because we've been increasing in the first round, and then in the first stitch, and then in the second round we were increasing in the last stitch, and that was helping offset it to keep this centered. Since I'm only doing a few more rounds, I'm not going to worry about that for mine. But if you are doing a lot of rounds where you're not increasing, then at the beginning of each round you will just turn your work and work that way. I will see you all on, for me, round 21. And after you have reached your desired length for your leg warmer, I will show you what to do next. On the next round, we are going to do a single crochet decrease all the way around, and that is going to help sort of bring this in a little bit. So it'll still be nice and bulky, but it will help kind of make it a little bit more controlled at the bottom so that it's not dragging on the floor too much. We will also be working into the back loop only of this round. And I am switching to blue at this point, and I'm going to use blue for this round and for the ribbing on the bottom. To do a single crochet decrease, insert your hook and then yarn over, pull up 2 loops, and you're not going to complete the single crochet. So then you'll go into the next stitch, and I'm keeping this yarn behind still so that I can weave it in. Yarn over, and then you'll pull up a loop, and you should have 3 loops now, and then you're just going to complete it like a normal single crochet where you yarn over and pull through, and you're just going to pull through all 3 loops. Okay, so I'll just show you how to do that one more time. Insert, yarn over, pull up 2 loops, but don't complete it. Insert into the next stitch, yarn over, pull up 3 loops, and then yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. So that is how you make a single crochet decrease. And again, we're just going to do this around in every stitch. And when you get to the end, you might have an uneven number. And if you do, that's totally fine. Just make 1 regular single crochet in the last stitch if that's the case for you. And I will see you at the end of this round. Once I reach the end of my decreasing, I am just going to slip stitch to the first decrease that we made to close the round. Now we're going to be making ribbing on the bottom. And this is a lot like the ribbing we made at the top, but it is going to be a little bit different because we are going to be connecting it to the project as we work. I just want mine to be smaller, so I'm going to chain 4. So I'm only going to be working into 3 stitches because the 4th chain is my turning chain. And like before, I am going to mark the very first chain with a stitch marker. And then the second chain from the hook, I'm going to mark with a stitch marker. If you remember, in the very first chain, we are just going to work into the back bumps. So skip 1 chain and then make a single crochet into the back bump of each chain. So what makes this different from the one that we made before, instead of just chaining 1 right now, we're going to be connecting it to the project. So first we're going to slip stitch to the next stitch. Just like that. And now we will chain 1 and we will turn our work. And when we do that, make sure that you're working into the right chain. So this is a chain 1 that we made, and this is the slip stitch that we made. So make sure you're skipping those 2. And then just like before, we're going to work into the back loop only, making our single crochets. At the top, it's the same. We chain 1 and then turn. Skip the chain 1 and then work your single crochets into the back loop. And then we will slip stitch to the next stitch. And then it just repeats like that the entire way around. So you'll slip stitch and then chain 1 and turn. I am at the end of my ribbing now, and just like before, you want to end at the top. I'm going to fold the ribbing so that I'm going to be seaming on the inside. For the seam, I am switching to a 4.0 mm hook, and then I'm going to go through this side over here. And again, I'm going through both of the loops, and then I'm going to go through both loops on the other side, and I'm just going to create a slip stitch. And I'm going to do the same thing going all the way down. Once I've seamed everything up, I'm going to chain one, and I'm just going to fasten off, and then I will hide this tail through the ribbing. For this part, I will be switching to a 4.0 mm hook, and I am using a sport weight yarn for my cord because I didn't want it to be too thick. But if you just want to use worsted or something like that, that would be totally fine. For the string that's going to go around our leg warmer here, I'm going to show you all how to make what is called a half I-cord. I like doing this more than just doing a regular chain because I just personally think it looks nicer. But if you want to do just a regular chain, that is totally fine. So to make the half I-cord, I'm basically just taking one skein of yarn, and I'm taking both ends from that skein and I'm going to hold them together. And let's create a slip knot with both of these held together. I think this method is also called like a double chain or a half I-cord. There's a few different names for it. So I'm going to grab one of the ends here. Okay, so I'm going to grab one of the ends and hold it just like I normally would with my yarn. Then I'm going to take the other end, and all you do is you're basically just creating a chain, but you're just adding an extra loop to it. So you just yarn over with the one piece, and then the yarn that I'm holding, I just create a regular chain with. So yarn over, chain, yarn over, chain, yarn over, chain, yarn over, chain. And that is all you do to create a half I-cord or a double chain, whatever you want to call this. Once you reach the end of your chain, you're going to take both pieces of your yarn and you're going to yarn over and just chain with both pieces. And now we will cut the ends, and I'm going to leave a semi-long piece so that I can weave this through the bell bags that I'm going to add. And then just pull up with your hook and then tighten this down. And I like to tie a double knot to secure this. And then down on the end that we began with, I like to tie another knot, just in case. And here is how I am measuring my piece so that I can make the second piece the same length. I'm just folding this in half and then holding it up to my measuring tape. And for me, with it folded, it's about 16 inches. So go ahead and make 2 of these. Now we are going to place both yarn ends on a darning needle for our string that we're going to attach. Then I'm going to place the needle under one of the ridges, and then I'm going to go over the next ridge and then under the next one. So it will look like that, and then you want to pull it through. So it will look like this, and you're just going to repeat that same pattern going around. As a tip, make sure you put your hand right here and have this kind of out and not sitting like this, because I have accidentally grabbed the other side while doing this before. When I get around to the other side, I'm just pulling it out right next to the other one. And then I just kind of pull this to even out the strings right here. Now I'm going to show you how to make this really cute tiny belt bag. I wanted mine to be as small as possible because I don't want something too bulky hanging off of my leg warmers. So I used a super fine size 1 yarn for this. My yarn is cotton. I would have preferred acrylic to match the leg warmers more, but I just wanted to use what I already had. If you are a beginner, I do have a tutorial on my channel explaining how to make the tiny belt bag step by step for beginners. In this tutorial, I won't be explaining every stitch, so you may want to check that tutorial out and I will have it linked. We're going to create the star for the bag first. So go ahead and create a magic ring. I am using a 2.75 mm hook for the whole bag and the star. And we are going to start by making the star for the bag first. So go ahead and make a magic ring. This is going to be a really simple tiny star. So to begin, we're just going to put a single crochet into the magic ring. And then we are going to chain 2. And we are going to create what's called a picot. And to create that, if you see your single crochet right here, there is a vertical bar. It's like right under the chains here, this vertical bar. This is the bar we're going to work into, and we're going to create a slit stitch there. So take your hook through that bar and create a slit stitch. And that is it for the star. We're just going to repeat that exact same thing and make 5 points in total. So just put a single crochet into the magic ring, chain 2, and then slit stitch to create a picot. And that's it. Once you are done with your 5 points, you're going to lift up your hook, and we're going to pull the tail to tighten our star. Our star looks a little bit strange right now, but we are going to cut our yarn and then we'll join it to the first point. So I'm leaving a semi-long tail because I want to use this to sew it onto the bag. So just pull the yarn through, place it on the darning needle, and then I'm just going to connect it to the first single crochet that we made. So I'm just putting my needle through the first single crochet, and then I'm going to pull through. There we go. And now I'm going to kind of decide where I want the top of the star to be. So I think I like this for the top of the star. So I'm going to turn this around, and I just want to take my yarn tail so that it's on the back of that point on the top. So I'm just going through a few pieces, and this is also going to help secure the tail that we just made. And then just bring it behind the point that you want to be the top of your star. And there we go. And now we can set our star aside for now. Now we are going to make the bag. So I'm switching to my golden yellow yarn, and I'm going to create a magic ring. In round 1, we are just going to place 6 single crochets into the magic ring. I personally prefer to do a yarn under, yarn over single crochet, but you can do whichever single crochet you prefer. I'll just show you how I do that real quick. So I go into the magic ring and then I yarn under by bringing the yarn under my hook. And then I bring up 2 loops, and then I yarn over my hook and I bring it through those 2 loops. I do like to mark my first single crochet with a stitch marker, just because I do feel like, especially since we're working so small, this first stitch can get really tight. And I've found that when I put a stitch marker in, it really helps me work into it in the next round. Okay, so let's just create 6 single crochets. And then we are going to close our round by pulling the tail And you want to pull that really tight so that you don't have any hole in the middle. When I'm working on this tiny little bag, I've found that I prefer to close my rounds, but if you would like, you can work in a continuous spiral on this pattern, but I'm going to just show you how I do it. So I'm going to close my rounds by slit stitching to the first stitch. It is still going to be pretty tight, so just kind of jam your hook in there. Now I'm going to begin my rounds with a chain 1, and I like to stitch mark my last stitch just because sometimes with this really tiny pattern, it can be hard to tell where your slit stitch is. In this round, we are going to increase in every stitch around, and at the end, we will have 12 stitches instead of 6. So just place 2 single crochets in each stitch. Okay, make sure you count your stitches at the end, and you should have 12. And then at the end of this round, we're just gonna do the same thing and slit stitch the first single crochet. Chain 1, and on round 3, we are going to do a repeating pattern of doing 1 single crochet and then an increase. And you'll just repeat 1 single crochet increase all the way around. At the end of this round, you will have 18 stitches. On rounds 4 through 6, we are just going to put 1 single crochet into each stitch around, and your bag should start to go upwards after that. Okay, here is how my belt bag is looking at the end of round 6. So now I'm going to start on round 7. And on this round, we're going to start decreasing. So we're going to chain 1. And the way the pattern is going to work is we're going to do a single crochet and then a decrease. So I'll just show you how I do my decreases. So place a single crochet into the first stitch. And then to decrease, I'm going to go into the next stitch, yarn under, and I'm pulling up 2 loops, but I'm not going to finish my single crochet. Instead, I'm going to go into the next stitch, and I'm going to yarn under, and I'm pulling up 3 loops now, and I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 3 loops. And that is how you do a single crochet decrease. And we are just going to repeat that same pattern going around by doing a single crochet and then a decrease. By the end of this round, we will have 12 stitches. At the end of round 7, I'm going to sew my star onto my bag. And I'll just show you how I get started with that, but if you want to see this in more detail, you can always check out my beginner friendly video for the belt bag, and I go over this in more detail. I personally prefer to sew the star onto the bag at this point while it's still open, but you can always do it at the end too if you would like. Now I'm looking for my seam and I'm trying to keep that on the back. And then I'm gonna just enter into the bag, and I am dragging the tail on the back of the star into the bag just to get it in there and out of the way. I'm gonna start by sewing on the top point first, which is where I had you take your yarn to. That's going to be on top. And I'm just going to sew this onto the bag. So I'm going to go ahead and sew mine on. I'll show you real quick how I do one of the points. So I'm just going to insert into the bag. And then I'm going to come out at a different point that's really close by, and I'm gonna grab part of the star and I'm gonna pull back this way, and I'm just going to repeat going around the star by inserting through the star and then going into the bag and then coming out of the bag and piercing a part of the star. And I'm just gonna do that all the way around. I am not the best at sewing, so there may be a better way to do this. Or you can also just glue the star onto the bag if you would like. But I will see you after I sew this on. After you're done sewing on the star, I'm just going to take the 2 yarn tails that are inside of it, and I'm going to tie a knot. Now I'm just going to stuff those inside of this. And I am going to put a little bit of filling into my belt bag. I don't want it to be too full because I don't want it to be too circular. So just a little bit of stuffing like that will be fine. On round 8, we are going to decrease the entire way around. Right now we have 12 stitches, and by the end of this round, we will have 6. For round 9, we are going to place 3 half double crochets into every stitch around. And we're going to be working into the front loops only. So if we're looking at our stitch right here, the loop that is closest to us, this is the front loop, and that's what we're going to work in for this round. So go ahead and chain 2, and this does not count as a stitch, and then place your 3 half double crochets into 1 stitch. When I reach the end of this round, I'm not going to slit stitch. Instead, I'm just going to cut my yarn because I'm going to do an invisible join at the top here. If you'd like, you can just slit stitch and chain 1 and fasten off. We don't need a super long tail, but leave a semi-long tail because we are going to also close this hole a little bit. Now on the inside of the bag, I'm going to go through a couple of stitches. But just go through a couple stitches. We're going to try to get the yarn string a little lower into the bag here. After I go through a few, I'm going to tie a knot to secure this. So I'm going through just a random stitch nearby. I'm going to pull through very slowly. I want to keep a loop here. And then I want to go back through that loop to create a knot. And then pull it tight. It doesn't really matter how messy it looks on the inside of the bag here. No one's really going to see it. But we're going to try our best to kind of close this circle. It's not going to be perfect, but it will close it enough so that our stuffing won't fall out. We're going to be working into the back loops that we formed in round 9. So all of these stitches here, and whichever one I'm closest to, I'm just going to take my needle through this way so that's coming towards me, and I'm going through that back loop. And then I'm going to pull this tightly, and I'm just going to repeat that, going around each back loop and pulling towards me and then tightening. Okay, so that looks closed pretty well. If yours doesn't look as closed, you can always just kind of keep taking your needle back and forth too. Because like I said, it doesn't have to be pretty. We just don't want our stuffing to fall out. So after you're happy with that, then I just take my needle through the bag. And I'm just coming out at a random point because we're just going to hide our tail. And now we can cut our yarn. There we go. Now we're going to add the red ribbon around the bag. I'm using the same red yarn that I used on my legwarmers. So I'm going to keep my yarn attached just so I want to use as little amount of yarn as I can. So I'm going to wrap this around the bag. And then I'm going to take this end and I'm going to wrap it around again. And then I'm taking this end and I'm going to wrap it around the other direction. Just like that. And now I'm going to tie a knot. And I'm not pulling too tight because we already closed this. And if we pull too tight, it will kind of deform the bag a little too much. And I'm going to create a double knot. And now I'm going to create a little bow. Now I'm just going to keep kind of adjusting and tightening my bow by pulling on the tails here and making the little ribbon smaller. And then I'm going to keep tightening it so that it is nice and secure. Once I'm happy with my ribbon, I'm going to cut my yarn. There we go. That is how mine looks. And our little bell bag is all done. It's so cute. I made 4 bell bags in total for my leg warmers. When you're done putting your string through, you're going to tie a bow. I like to leave one end longer than the other. Okay, now it is time to attach our bell bags to the ribbon on our leg warmers. Okay, I'm going to take one end at a time through the bell bag. So I'm going into the middle of the bell bag and I'm just going to grab some stitches in the middle. And I'm just coming back out and pulling that through. And now I'm going to grab my other tail. I'm going to do the same thing, but now I'm going to go in the opposite direction. So where it's coming out of on the other end, I'm going to insert it through that side and then bring it out the other side. Then I'm going to tighten this. I'm going to have one of the tail ends pierce through our cord that we made. Now I'm going to tie a double knot. And we're going to hide the ends through the bell bag. And I'm just going to pierce through a random spot and then just come out wherever. I'm going to tug on that. And then we'll bring the other side through. I'm going to give them a little pull, and then I'm just going to grab my bag a little bit so it doesn't get deformed. And now you just want to pull tightly and cut the strings. And then you can kind of grab your bag again to have those hide inside of it. And there we go. That is how we attach the bell bags to our ribbon here. Okay, our leg warmers are all complete and they are looking so cute. Remember to subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss any of my upcoming tutorials. I have a lot of really cute upcoming patterns coming out. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope that this tutorial was helpful, and I will see you next time. Bye!